How are we doing, friends? And welcome back as always to Continues to Tick. And when I reference the title of this whole entire channel, it's the time. Time, that clock on the wall, that is what continues to tick. We're a couple weeks into January. That's why we find ourselves here in the monthly dividend portfolio review, the first big review of 2025. And if this is your first time here, welcome. I've been seeing, more and more people slowly trickle into this channel. This channel moves very slowly. We move very slowly. We utilize this whole entire concept of time. Time does move quickly, especially the older you get. That's the scary part. You can't really hold on to time at all. So as you try to grab it, try to stay in the moment, it sneaks right past you. And that's the thing. Time continues to pass, regardless if you want it to, regardless if you don't want it to. But if this is your first time here, friends, in these big portfolio reviews, I tell you how much I fund my portfolio and how often, and I do have a little update for that, especially for those that have been following my journey for the last several months. My sector allocations and percentages, I'll touch on that, giving you my best and worst performers. I'll share with you guys my number of current holdings in my portfolio, my current dividend portfolio's yield, as well as my expense ratio, and my short and long-term plans for the portfolio. It's always good to do that from time to time. I do it every single month at least. It's good to do that often. And friends, in this video, I tell you how much my dividend portfolio currently pays me in dividends. And when it comes to the topic of today's video, use the timestamps down below to jump around, but at the very end, I'm going to talk on the amount of times I've almost given up this strategy. And I'm sure we all can relate to this. Hopefully, as I speak about my experience, you can relate to some of that. But friends, let's go. Let's keep going. We're currently at $91,736.48. And, I just want to start by showing you the chart here. Sure, this is all time. For those that are curious, I started this portfolio back in July of the year 2020, right after the crazy pandemic. But even in that whole entire year, if you remember, a lot of things were unstable, uncertain, but it was literally that year where the market, it dipped, but it rebounded very quickly, and it hasn't looked back ever since. But looking at the 1 year chart, friends, around this time right here on my graph, I ended up selling slightly over $5,000 worth of this portfolio right when I was hitting 101,000, almost 102,000, and that hurt. But sometimes you have to stabilize, and I was really cutting down at the same time the market was going down, and now we're going back up. And that led into me funding into this portfolio again. I funded $25. It's been months. It's literally been months since I've actually funded money into this portfolio. So even just throwing in $25, that was a big deal for me. If you're wondering how much I'm funding, before this last week, it was nothing for like 5 months. I just started investing again. I will tell you the whole backstory. I work as an RN, for those that don't know. Been an RN for 5.5 years, almost 6 years or so. I'm currently fully remote in the state of California. I can live anywhere. I can live in Joshua Tree. I can go live in Manchester, California. As long as I have internet, I can work there. And that's the beauty of my current job. It just cost me $24,000 of a pay cut to get this job, which wasn't easy. But if you look at the last 3 months, that's that action I'm talking about. And that's how much I fund my portfolio for the moment. And like I said, right now I have it off again. But let me go into my holdings, because this is the best place I could show you my unrealized gain. My cost basis is $66,000, which isn't bad, especially for a dividend growth portfolio. A lot of this involves growth and dividend dripping back into the portfolio. Everything that I make from this portfolio, which I'm going to share with you, I put back. So even though I'm not actively funding as much as I used to, I'm still reinvesting my dividends. And I guess back to the story, back to my initial point, I wanted to tell you I was an RN because I was making really good money. I still make good money, and I'm not going to complain as an RN. But at the very beginning of this whole entire thing, friends, I was investing $500 every week. So in my funding, 2021 was my perfect year. I was funding $500 every single week. In 2022, I think I decided to go back to school. So I tried to hold on to, $300 or $400 every week. 2023, I completely dropped off. It was my full year of school, and I was paying for it out of pocket. And I actually went to Greece this year. But I also graduated this year, for my master's program. And then 2024, you saw, and I sold 5,000. That was a crazy year. And here we are in 2025 and $25. So just working our way down, friends. If you're wondering how to view my portfolio, because I'm going to dive into it here just a bit, and I have a link in my description box. You can click on it. It's free. So if you're curious, take a look. So I want to first talk on my sector allocations. So actively, I have 14% set for tech. As you can see, my actual is 20, and I'll show you in a second. It's one holding in particular. It's a good and bad thing. Real estate, I have it set at 13%, consumer staples at 12%, ETF at 10, index fund at 10, utilities at 10, and so on and so forth, as you can see the screen here. Towards the end here, I do have energy at 4%, I have healthcare at 2%. That's a new thing. It used to be bigger, but it was like my worst performing sector for a while. So when I sold my $5,000 of shares, I sold a lot of healthcare. And then let me just show you, my best performing sectors. Like I said, I have tech. Tech is booming at 450% return. You're going to see it's a blessing and a curse. Blessing is I have Nvidia, who has just been rock solid, as you guys know, with the AI wave, and I've had them in my portfolio for a long time, and it's just one of those golden eggs that I got over time. So it's been doing really well. Oracle's doing the second best. Apple's fourth best, 106%. Apart from tech, I do have financials, 139% return, energy 108. I'll show you consumer discretionary, 42% in the green. McDonald's. Apart from that, I have utilities at 37%. My worst performer, healthcare. It used to be worse, now it's only down 15%. And then consumer staples down 10%. And now going into my activity section, friends, this is my massive $25 deposit. And that's a big deal. and I hope to put in another one sometime soon. Everything in the green here is a dividend payout, and then everything in the white at some point was a dividend drip. This is the neat thing about being a dividend investor. Later on I'm going to be telling you about the times I wanted to quit, but the things that keep me here are everything here that you see. I still remember recently my $100 day. Like, I woke up, looked at my phone, and it said I think it was my index fund or something, a payment of $100 in dividends. I was like, man, and that's the beauty, right? That's the beauty of this. You wake up one day and you see $100 for no reason other than you just getting your dividends going to your phone, right? So that's really neat. This is the data. As you saw earlier on one of the screens, I do have 49 holdings. If you have any questions about it, reach out. I always mention it from time to time. The dividend yield, it's at 2.91%. It's a little bit on the lower side for people. For me, it's about right. Anywhere between 2.67, the lowest, all the way up to like 3.8, 3.7. It hovers between then, and that's my comfort level. So 2.9 is okay, right under 3%. And then my expense ratio is low. And I'll take a dividend yield. Let me just go back. I'll take a dividend yield like this because I've been getting a lot of growth, right? And this is a dividend growth portfolio. I've been getting a lot of growth from Nvidia. Nvidia is a really large holding in my portfolio, and that thing pays literally pennies, but there's a lot of growth there, right? A lot of growth potential. So this is some of the data from my portfolio. So let's see. I touched on that. So let me tell you guys my short and long-term plans for the portfolio. So friends, I'll start with my long-term plan. So I work for the state government. I work actually for the state government of California. I'm an RN. I make $113,000 a year. That's my current situation. My plan is ultimately to continue this dividend portfolio and, on the back end, get a pension and retire at the age of 50. That's the earliest I can retire with my pension. I'll actually get really good insurance coverage because I'm vested with the state. Retiring early at 50 should make sense for me at that point. That is like the latest I plan to retire. That's my long-term vision. If it could be sooner than that, great. If it's not, then that is when I feel like I really can retire, which even then is early, right? Age 50 is early. Anything earlier than that is very early, right? It's the way I look at it. Most people don't retire in their 50s. Most people retire in their 60s. And I would say even moving forward in this current economy, some people may never retire at all, right? Let alone earlier than like 67, for example. My short-term goal, leaning into this, is just to continue to stabilize this portfolio. That pay cut really hit. And, over the last 5 months, it's every single month has been, like, I've been feeling it more, right? I've been at this new job for 7 full months. This is going to be my 8th. And every single month that has gone by, I've had to make an adjustment, right? Less therapy every other week, less eating out. If I eat out, eat out differently, right? Okay, cut back some expenses, some of those subscriptions, right? Okay, cut the funding into the dividend portfolio, right? All these little things had to continue to happen. And eventually, in November, December, I really just ripped the Band-Aid off because I was forced to actually sell a chunk of my dividend portfolio to pay off my expenses, right? That I was kind of accumulating. And then I also wanted to pay off my car, which was a $400 monthly payment, every month. I was paying it off in 3 years, paid it off, and it's done, right? It's done now. Now I get those $400 of extra cash coming in every month. It gave me a little bit more, collar room, let's say, and I'm really just stabilizing still. In addition to the short-term plan, I don't know. I have another channel. It's called Male Nurse Mentor, and on that channel, I'm starting like a consulting advising service for pre-nursing students. I really don't know how it's going to go, but I'm practically done with the website and I'm going to launch it. So that's going to be happening. So if you need any pre-nursing advising services and need guidance, right, and advising, so that's happening here pretty soon. In addition to that, I'm also thinking of something else. I was thinking about real estate, but I'm just not in a position to buy any real estate right now. My partner's going back to school for her MFT license, and we're probably gonna have to move, depending on whichever program she gets into. So because of that, wherever she goes, maybe also invest in real estate, because we're gonna be there for a good 4 or 5 years. If it makes sense. Other than that, thinking about, looking into swing trading and practicing with paper, paper trading and seeing how that goes, right? So I'm just coming up with ideas to try to get my income back up. I don't make any money from this channel. I'll be very transparent. All of this has been for fun. I'm getting closer and closer to getting monetized, but I'm not there yet. And for this last section here, friends, how much my dividend portfolio currently pays me in dividends. Let's talk about it. So here's my dividend income, friends, $2,532.31. I use the projected next 12 months because this is moving forward into the future. I think that's the best calculation. M1 has this really neat tracker here. It breaks it down by month. It also breaks it down by average monthly income, which is $211. If I was to use this and pocket this money, that'd be a really good idea, especially when I'm struggling sometimes. But because I'm not funding anything in, I at least want to hold on to this idea of dripping back this money into my portfolio, which does help psychologically and fundamentally, right? I'm funding and putting money into this dividend portfolio, although I'm not investing aggressively myself. So this is it, friends, if you're curious. And friends, this very last segment here that I want to touch on is the amount of times I've almost given up this strategy. And I'm just going to go over these things, one at a time. So, just right off the jump here, think of all the times that you've wanted to quit this strategy, right? It's been a lot, right? Oftentimes, I've always had this habit of, okay, let me just pivot into something else. Being a dividend investor, I'll attribute it to a very slow process, like watching grass grow and paint dry, right? It's that slow, but it's also rewarding. It's rewarding over time, especially if you can fund aggressively. For me, I reached $100,000, in about 4.5 years, right? And I acknowledge that. And now I'm here, and again, I'm slightly under 100. They always say your net worth begins to exponentially grow after 100K. I didn't get the chance to see that, but we'll get there again. But it's a very slow process. So jumping here to number 1, no kidding. It takes time, and it takes a lot of time. This strategy takes decades. And like I said, if it's like watching paint dry and grass grow, there's a strategy behind it, which is do what you do, but at the end of it, you have to allow time to do its thing. Paint has to dry, it takes time, right? That's what this dividend portfolio is. You put money into it, you invest in this strategy, it takes time. Because of the amount of time that it's taken, like I've said, I've wanted to quit. It's just a very slow, boring process, but at the same time, there's a beauty behind that, right? If you were a growth investor, right? And let's say I mentioned swing trading. If I were to swing trade, right? The strategy is so different, right? Trading, investing short term, so different. You actually feel a lot of stress when you do it that way. You live life in a different way. You worry about the holding when you buy in and when you have to sell. You worry about losing money when you buy, right? You're buying for a speculation, right? That it's going to go up in value. And if it doesn't, it hurts, right? It does. And there's nothing you could do about it. You start worrying about your stocks more. It's just a psychological thing. And I remember that feeling when I would invest in Tesla, Amazon, when I was investing in crypto, Bitcoin. Some of those losses were great. Some of those wins were great, and some of those losses were horrible, right? The biggest loss to date is Bitcoin, about 4 years ago. And I traded it for an altcoin. And that's the feeling that comes up, right? That's the downside. And dividend investing has a downside. The downside is that it takes time. And number 2, friends, the thing I mentioned here is this strategy will not make you rich. So because this thing takes time, it takes a while to actually get wealthy. But it's a proven strategy that does work. But this idea of getting rich, super rich off being a dividend investor, it doesn't exist really unless you really fund a lot of money into this. But this strategy itself, what I'm learning over time, it's not going to make me rich, right? What's going to make me rich is opening up a business, taking a different type of risk, investing your money in this strategy, right? Because it's so passive, because it takes so much time. It's going to get us in a good place. It might make us wealthy, but this idea of having all money to blow everywhere and being rich, it's not going to happen. At least my bubble has been bursting over time. But it does work, friends. As you see, I make $2,500 a year with the portfolio size that I have, and I'll take that. And as far as this last one, friends, learning to accept these things, that's part of it, right? The amount of times that I've given up because it's taken too long, because I realize, this isn't going to get me rich or make me wealthy overnight, it's made me want to give up and pivot into something else that I feel like would be better, right? Like opening up a business, investing in, a duplex for real estate, taking a different type of jump. So learning to accept these things is something that's an ongoing thing for a dividend investor, because this idea of, or this feeling of giving up is going to creep in often. It just will. It's a long strategy, and it's going to happen. So learning to accept these things is an ongoing battle / relationship with yourself and this strategy. So just some things that I wanted to mention on this topic. And did I want to quit already in 2025? Yeah. But, here I am. And I'm learning to accept these things. And so that's going to be it, friends. I appreciate you guys watching the video, hitting the like button, and subscribing. This journey's slow, like I've mentioned. I'll continue to be here every 2 weeks. And good luck, friends, on your goals going further into this 2025. We got this. Sure, we want to quit sometimes, but we're still here. Keep going. I'll keep going too.